Welcome to Becoming Self-Made and our webinar series on the food industry. How many of you are home, you're in a job, and you're always wanderlusting? Could I start my own business? Could I buy my own franchise? Felicia James is a woman that had a career in a completely different industry, actually in my industry of entertainment, and she always thought about it. Finally, she took the plunge and she bought a Wingstop. It's a great, great story, and I know so many of you think, what if I could do that? I want to thank Coca-Cola for sponsoring this webinar and always being with me from the beginning. We're part of a global initiative called 5 by 20, where Coca-Cola is empowering 5 million women around the world to become entrepreneurs by the year 2020. We're part of that. Thank you so much, Coca-Cola. And now, a woman who switched careers, like so many of you are thinking, one after a new franchise that's out there. There's so many every day. Let's meet Felicia James. Felicia, thank you so much for sharing your self-made story. I am in love with your story because you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah.
We both come from the entertainment industry, and you've had a whole entire other career, and then you decided to go for a franchise. And I have to say, I have franchising lust. I really feel like if I had to do my life over again, I would have bought so many franchises. I feel like it's working smart, not hard, right?
Yes.
Like understanding that there's somebody else that can come up with a formula for you, that can help you, instead of all of us always wanting to start from scratch. But I have to hear your whole story because most people think after they've had another career, oh, I can't start that now. And you're an example that yes, in fact, you can change your mind
Yes.
and start all over again.
Yes.
So tell me your whole backstory. How did you, first of all, you were in the entertainment business. So tell me how you got into that. What was your thinking? Why did you want to do that? And, tell me that whole backstory.
Okay. Well, I came to, Los Angeles from Oklahoma City, a small town with big dreams. And, my first thought wasn't to be in entertainment, but because I was surrounded by it, by peers and friends, I decided that was for me.
And what was your first thought before that? Like, what would you have done if you hadn't done that?
Oh, if I wouldn't have done entertainment, I probably would have just been clerical at somebody's office. A job with no name, basically. Entertainment, even though you don't have a specific title, is entertainment. So that is a name. So
you get, like we all do, you get sort of a little glamorized.
You do.
It does feel like, wow, I'm working at such and such a place. I talk about that in the book. I say, sometimes for women, Prince Charming isn't just your mate. It's like the corporation you work for.
it definitely is.
Right?
It definitely is.
And you then think that that's enough.
And it's a stereotype when you work in entertainment on any level. As soon as you say what entity of entertainment you work for, that's an automatic, really? And you could just be in the mailroom, they don't care.
So where did you start out?
I started out as a paralegal. Once I got here, I went back to school, got my paralegal degree, and I started off in business affairs.
So that's the legal department of a studio. And
Yes.
which studio did you start in?
I was at Sony Pictures Entertainment.
Again, I'm going, oh, right?
Yeah.
That's sexy. I worked for Sony too, so
Yeah.
I can relate, right? It feels like when you even walk into the building, even if your job is very ordinary, you feel like, I'm at Sony Pictures.
I got tangled into it. I was happy to say, before they could even ask, oh, Sony Pictures, so you easily can get entangled into saying where you work because people are going to have an admiration for it, but behind the scenes, it was a business that was eventually I lost a lot of faith and trust in, because I was laid off,
So let's talk about that a little bit, because one of the things I talk about in the self-made book is this Prince Charming thing. And I say, women say to me, why should I become self-made? Or, I tell women, as you see, even start 1 hour a week. Why? And I say, because you don't live in an era anymore where your mate can take care of you necessarily. We're all trying to make ends meet. Where your government can take care of you. Where a corporation, you get in and for life you're working your way up. That's just not the... Companies are being disrupted.
Yes.
And when you go into these very sexy companies, and I talk about this in the book, I've worked for every sexy company you can think of, but the fact is they've all been disrupted.
Yeah.
And so for me to count on that for the rest of my life it's a terrible mistake. Even if you don't get laid off, eventually, years from now, you would have turned 50.
Yeah.
And then they would have been like, wow, we can hire 3 of you for half the money.
See, and that was the other problem. And, just as you were saying, the millenniums are coming up. They're 100 times smarter, 100 times wiser, and things
They're very good at the
capable.
internet.
Yeah,
It's
all,
not
all
our-
the social media stuff, and so you're pretty much going up against people or young adults who you're totally out of their league. When you're trying to reapply for a job, so you have to kind of like start thinking fast forward. What am I going to do? And the worst part is, we're with us being similar in background, of how we're raised, parents teach you to go to school, go to college, and get a job and retire from that job. You can't retire when you keep getting laid off, because every time you get laid off, it sets back your tenure,
That's right. And also, I don't think people realize that just by making money and saving money, you can't retire anymore.
Oh, no, you can't.
You
That's
have got
not
to
enough.
invest in something
Yes.
that's going to make money while you sleep, that's going to grow in worth.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're not going to make it to the end of the road.
You're not going to
But let's talk about something that maybe only you and I can talk about. If you are one of us and you're a woman of color in a corporation, there is part of you that feels like, how can I let this go when most people can't even get in the door? I'm in the door. I'm one of like the very few people, because in the entertainment industry, you see a lot of us, but they're actors or singers.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of us behind the scenes. I mean, that's the truth.
I agree. I was like one of 2 in our department. It was just me and another gentleman. And, the good thing about LA is the melting pot of colors, so you don't really notice until you notice.
Right.
And then you're like, hey, I didn't ever know I was like the only one in here, but luckily they didn't treat you different. But it is a mindset you tend to realize, and then you go from there to the executive book to see, let me see how many of us are in this book. And let me tell you, if I saw 1, it was 1 to none.
So let's be honest, when you look like us and you get in the door at one of these places and you tell your parents, they're like, oh my God, you're going to be the biggest success.
You made it.
And you don't realize like you're one of very few people, and you
Yeah.
feel guilty almost leaving.
Yes. Well, see, I didn't have to feel guilty in leaving because they left me. So, because
They
I
laid
would
you
have been a stereotypical like my parents. Had I not gotten, in a position where I had to make changes in my life, I might have still been there.
Well, and let's face it, it's not just the diversity thing, it's the age thing. You're in these corporations, and let's say they hadn't laid you off, and you'd be there and you get to 50. And then they're going to think, well, they can hire 3 of you, and these millennial kids all know how to do the internet better. And let's face it, so you're not
They
sitting
chop from the top too.
They do.
Whoever makes the most
The
money
most
goes
money.
first.
That's
So
right.
the longer you've been there, and like you said, you run into this age factor. You've been there X amount of years. You're finally in your head getting to the point where, ooh, I'm making enough money. My house is almost paid for. I can get this car. Now I can travel. And then that's when they let you go because you're at the top of your game. So it works totally opposite for us getting to the top of the game if you're working corporate America. You have to get at the top of your game with your own feet and your own legs.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because I think, all of us benefit from being in corporate America and working for other people on their dime and really learning the business and learning systems. So I never tell women, you shouldn't just leave your job and tomorrow start. You have to plan it out. You have to be thoughtful.
Gotta plan it.
You have to, when you're in these jobs, think like an owner. Go, what are they doing wrong? What are they missing? What are the holes they're missing that I could fill?
Yeah.
You constantly have to make your brain work like that, right?
Yes. You can't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm gonna open a restaurant, I'm gonna be a franchisee. You have to do your legwork. You have to do your homework. You have to do your Googles. You have to talk to people, because it's going to be a life investment. You know, you have to make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's before you take the leap. And I advise everybody to take the leap. You know.
But they should do it while they have the job. They should be thinking like this.
Yeah.
Because look, so you get laid off, right? You got laid off.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened to you when you got laid off?
This was probably my second layoff. And then that's when the first time, well, you know, my things had changed. My first layoff, my daughter was still in middle school. So I had to quickly react and get a job. And, you know, I got right back into Sony because at that time, you know, I had my daughter's schooling and her activities. So I didn't have time to become an entrepreneur. I only had room to be a mom.
But did you already start thinking, I better think ahead?
Oh, yeah. I was already thinking ahead. I was already thinking ahead. And so by the time it happened again, I already had my...
you were ready.
Had my eggs laid out. I knew exactly where I had done my research. I had studied which ones I could actually realistically buy into.
Okay, I want to really go back because I love this. And I think women need to hear this. So you get laid off time number 1, you go back in, and what did you start to do? How did you mastermind your plan?
You masterminded by doing your research to see, because you can have dreams all day long, but you have to check into reality to see what is my money going to allow me to do, what is my time going to allow me to do, what is my situation and location going to allow me to do, because you have to make sure you make wise decisions that's based on where you are right now financially, physically, and location.
So I can tell you're very grounded and organized.
Yes.
What made you decide to want to do the franchise thing? Why didn't you decide I'm going to go do something else? I'm going to go start an eBay store. Why franchise?
Because after I did my research and I realized that all the different codes and all the health department, that I needed a blueprint on how to succeed.
Okay, so I'm glad you're saying this because, again, speaking to so many women, and when I use the word entrepreneur, they get freaked out. Mm-hmm. They're like, I'm supposed to be Sarah Blakely that invents Spanx. Not everyone is an inventor of an idea.
Yeah.
And inventing an idea is the hardest possible way to be an entrepreneur. You have to be one of those people that comes up with something and bets on something and 99% of them fail.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that because being very pragmatic, that's why I have wanderlust about franchises, because I go, why would I start something from scratch when someone else has figured something out?
Yeah.
And I have all those other people to help me, and I, as you said, have a blueprint at least to get going.
Exactly.
And that's how you thought?
Yes, that's how I thought.
So what are the different brands you looked at when you were looking at brands to buy into?
I looked at In-N-Out. I looked at McDonald's. I looked at Chipotle. You know, I looked at Layers and even Winchell's Donuts.
Wow.
You know, so I had Layers and I was trying to figure out, I wanted a franchise that was already a brand, already self-made. All I had to do was step into the shoes and start walking, you know, and I wanted something that was, it catered to one thing. I didn't want to do something that did burgers and burritos and sandwiches and salads. You know, that's just too much.
You wanted a simple thing.
Something that had a simple overhead.
So I want to hear, because I think this will help our women, when you looked at like McDonald's or like all these different ones, what was the process of elimination? Like, was one very expensive to get in?
Yes.
So talk about that.
Yes, to buy into a McDonald's, you know, with any of them, the criteria are going to be different. They're going to all require something or have more expectations. Mm-hmm. So as far as McDonald's, the liquid that you have to have available,
the cash available.
Yes, the cash available was just phenomenal. No one has a couple of $1 million laying around.
So it's a company that's already pretty established.
Yeah.
So they can ask for whatever they want.
Yes.
I want to get into your brain of how you did process of elimination with all of these other ones to get to yours. Mm-hmm. So what was kind of your thinking?
My thinking was I had to work with what I had, and based on, you know, your credit, based on what liquid you have, and based on what's available. because when you go into a franchise, you don't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to open up a Wingstop right over here on Slauson. It doesn't work like that. When you contact the brand or the franchisee, you know, they have territories. You have to be available. It took me like almost a year and a half to even get this Ventura County where we have, you know, because they're very detailed about not overlapping the stores.
With other territories.
Yeah.
And so what did you do in that year and a half to make money while you're trying to put this together?
I had a husband.
So you got him to go work. I love that. While
Yes.
you
My
were...
husband was already working, and we both, you know, spoke about, you know, what I could do and what I could bring to the family. So he kind of like took care of the bills while I brainstormed our next step.
Perfect. And when you did this, and this year and a half, did it take just way longer? Was it harder than you thought?
Oh, it was way harder, and it took way longer than I thought, and it was a lot of work, you know. So for those who want to go into franchising, you know, it seems like it's something easy, but there's a lot of layers to it. You just put the dedication to it and you can definitely do it, but you have to put the time and dedication into it. And once you put the time and dedication into it, it doesn't stop. You know, once you go and finally get your territory and you put your money down and, you know, you're finally able to say, hey, I got one, you know, that's only the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, when you made this decision, and how far into it did you decide on which franchise you were going to pursue? Early on?
Well, after I did my research and knew what was feasibly, you know, reality for me. And, you know, the second thing is you have to enjoy or like what you're endorsing. And
right. So
me
you have to
and
like
my
the
husband,
food.
my husband loved Wingstop, you know. So when we had our list, he kept going back to Wingstop. So at the end of the day, he's the one who really said, you know, we have to just go with Wingstop because we both love it. And so you have to love
That's
what
true.
you're endorsing.
That is true.
Because you can't sell it if you don't.
That's
because
right.
it will show. It will show on your face, your mannerisms, your conversation. You know, I can easily speak about Wingstop all day long because, like, last night was one of the NBA games, well, on Wednesday night. And first thing everybody wants is Wingstop. So we bring the Wingstop. And we eat it just like we're guests. So, you know, we are very proud to bring our product, and we're very proud to eat our product. So you have to.
That's important.
It's very important.
So the other thing you mentioned, which I think is important, is when you decide you want to be a franchisee or any business, sometimes the place where you're at is saturated.
Yeah.
So you might have to, for the purposes of entrepreneurship, move.
Yes.
So for you, what happened?
That was our story. That's why it took us about a year and a half to get a location, because our area where we wanted to be was saturated. It was already taken, you know, by a few other franchisees. And so when the territory in Ventura County came up, they offered that to us. And so my husband and I had to decide, you know, did we want to try to commute out there, or do we want to make the sacrifice and sell and move? So we made the sacrifice and we sold and moved. So now we're living out by our Wingstop, we were in LA County for 20 years. So, and now we've been in Ventura County for a year. But that's the sacrifice and the leap you have to make when you believe in something, and when you're trying to develop, you know, your own financial independence.
So when you created this, I'm sure when you go through the financials with Wingstop or with any franchise, they tell you, okay, so you're investing this much money, and then you're going. I mean, I don't want people to think that day one you're making bank, right?
No.
So it's going to take right. It's going to take years to make back that money.
Yeah.
Right. So you're investing for the long haul.
Yes.
So can you explain a little how that works?
Yeah, you know, when it's with anything, when you make an investment, you look for the long-term goal of it, because it's not going to happen right away. You know, you invest in the store, but most importantly, you invest in your employees too. So my husband and I decided if we were going to do this and we were going to be successful at it, investments is layers. You invest in your store, you invest in your future, and you invest in your employees. Because one of our biggest problems was the turnaround that we had in our employees. So once we finally got, a handle on that, we invested in our employees. Right out the gate, even though we had only been open for a month, we decided in January that we would pay for our employees' books, those that were in college. Because we want them to understand and know we're happy that they work for us, but at the same time that they matter and that they're important to us and that their goals or whatever they want to do in life, that Wingstop and working with us is a part of their journey. And we want to make sure that they reach their other goals as well. So, we implemented programs for them, and it was one of the best investments that we've made. Now, I can sleep at night because our crew and our managers, they do a heck of a job at that store. And we even get text messages from our managers saying, they've never felt so appreciated in working for someone.
So how has this been different for you? You came from corporate America. You did this big switch. Have you ever had moments where you go, what did I do? Or has anyone said to you, oh my God, what have you done? Or have you felt that way?
Yes. Maybe once a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a big responsibility. It's a big shift.
Yeah. The good thing about corporate was you always had somebody taking care of you. You always had a prince taking care of you. But
Prince might tell you to bye-bye any day.
Yeah. But now you
have to be Prince.
You're the prince. I'm the prince. And so I have to take care of me. So on those nights when your numbers are low or your manager is sick and you got to go in and close the store at midnight, those are the moments that make you say, what did I get myself into? Am I sure I'm cut up for this? And then the next morning when you wake up and realize that, you look around and you go to your store and you realize, this is mine. I did this. And so those moments of happiness and bliss outweighs the having to go in and close the store at night a couple of times a week, or the store didn't do good today, but, playoff and Super Bowl, it does phenomenal. So, you're going to find the balance. And
it's funny because I talk a lot about this in the book because I have felt this way, right? That sometimes when you work for the corporation, right? Mm-hmm. You feel like it sounds good, but in your heart, you almost feel like a fraud.
Oh, yeah.
Because you feel like it's really not that great, and you're working for these people, and sometimes you see things that you don't want to see or whatever. And when you work for yourself, the bad news is sometimes you get FOMO. You get fear of missing out. Like you go, oh my God, this is 24/7, 7 days a week. Because it's like a kid. You can't, the kid, if they call you.
That's how I phrase it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's not ending. And then people call you to do things and you're like, you can't.
I phrase it. I call it my baby.
It's your baby, right?
When people call and say, so where are you guys going for vacation this summer? I said, well, we have the baby now, and the baby's legs are not strong enough, so we can't go anywhere this summer.
Right.
The baby is always crying. The baby always needs something. The baby is always draining my bank account. So I always refer to the store as my baby, my firstborn.
But I will tell you, as someone also who has been an entrepreneur for many years, that I've learned to realize that when you feel that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that you don't realize until years later that where you are doing that work for your business is where you're supposed to be. That's the place. That's the hot place. That's better than any party. That's better than any dinner, because someday you're going to wake up and that thing is going to bear fruit.
Yes.
And you're going to go, oh my God, how could I have ever done this in a job?
Never.
Now let's talk about something else, because one of the things I've heard about franchises is that the goal for franchisees is to have multiple franchises.
Yes.
Because then you amortize your costs, right?
Yes.
Between the so is your goal to own 5 of them?
Yes.
It is.
Yes. We're already working on number 2. We have our territories, so we know exactly where we're going to, the areas, the locations on where they're going to be. We just need to find the areas. We know what cities we have, but we have to do, and once again, you still have to do your homework and your research, because what's highly important is your demographics. You have to make sure that your location is visible. You have to make sure that you're not in an elbow behind some big bank. You have to make sure that the size of your store is not ran by their surrounding areas. You have to make sure that you have they call it a grocery store or a main chain of something there that's already drawing customers. And then you start just kind of like, when you get there, they recognize you being there, and so you start feeding off of the grocery store, the Subway, the Panda, whatever there. So you have to make sure you do your research and make sure you're not an island.
So it's strategic thinking.
Oh, it's strategic
Now,
thinking.
when you started flirting with these people from Wingstop, do they then put you through a traineeship program?
Oh, yeah. We went
So
through
you and your
training.
husband have to learn everything.
Ground up. We went to Dallas for 4 weeks and trained. We worked inside of a restaurant. For 1 week we worked the day shift. For the other week we worked the night shift. I mopped floors. I scrubbed grease. I cleaned fryers. I served customers. We did it all. And the only way that you can run a restaurant is to know it from ground zero. There's no job that's, as an owner, there's no job too small or too big for me. And I would tell my employees that too. If the bathroom needed to be cleaned and I was there, I cleaned the bathroom.
So was that a little shock to your system? Starting in the restaurant
Still a
business?
shock to my system.
It's a shock. It is. It's kind of
Yeah.
shock. Are you a cook? Are you into cooking?
I'm not going to say I am, but I am.
But wow, it is a completely, it's like, I feel like when you do you take these quantum leaps, like I went back to school.
Yeah.
And that was a shock to my system. Thank you. When my professor said to me, "You write like a rapper. What is this? I can't," because I'm used to writing like a TV person, right? Like in little like snippets, right? And he's like, "You need to learn to write all over again." But there's something that happens when you humble yourself and you go back to a place of not knowing anything.
Yeah.
And you learn something from the bottom up. I don't think there's any substitute for that.
It's not. And the only way that your employees will respect you and give you their all is if they know that there's no job too small for you to do either,
So let me ask you something. When you see, kind of the holy grail, right? When you see yourself in this, you're in the baby phase, right? Which is hard. And
Yes.
I know, because I went through a year of writing a book and selling it, and it's very hard.
Every day.
Everything, when you do something new that you don't know how to do, it's very hard. What is your inspiration? Have you met other people that are franchisees that own 5 or 10?
Yes.
And that are doing really well and are at the other side of the hump? What do you hear from them?
Well, we've made it a point to become associates with other franchisees and go to dinner with some of them at least once a month, because you need this empowering, you need this boost sometimes, because in your head your store is going to start, in my head I thought my store was going to be $1 million store. It's far from it right now because it's still growing legs. But when you go talk to the other franchisees, they let you know that you're a new business, that it's going to take time, that you have to get the word out there. For us, being where we are, we're in a whole totally new territory. We're the first one out there. So, they're still finding out that we're there. They may have heard of Wingstop before, and some people have and some people have not. It's amazing. It's startling to me when people say, "I never heard of Wingstop." I'm thinking, what planet you on? But that's the reality of opening in a business that's
Pioneering a territory.
Yeah, pioneering a territory. And so we cut time out of our schedule to go have dinner and talk to the franchisees that have 4 stores, 5 stores. And they let us know how it was when they opened their first store. And that is not going to be easy. And that is going to take time. It's going to take dedication. It's going to take a lot of your time to build it up and get the word out. It's all on us, but they do give you the tools. We have a brand website where you can go on there and you can get pretty much what you want. You can order it, you can have it custom made, you can have it, tailored to your county or your community, but most of it is up to you. And that's another thing. You will spend thousands and thousands of dollars marketing and promoting your restaurant before it opens. You have to get banners, you have to get flyers. We even did a marketing street team that we had people go out and pass flyers out door to door. And then we had a couple of girls wear the t-shirts and go to a couple of the local football games, pass out flyers to let them know we're coming. You do the usual USPS mailings where you announce that Wingstop is coming soon.
So you have to do your work.
You have to do your work.
How does it feel in your body to say, I own this restaurant and I am self-made?
Yeah, I'm getting the glow and the smile right now. It's not only an inner body thing, it's an outward body thing. You can feel it. I feel like my eyes are bright like a baby whenever I'm able to say, I have a Wingstop, I'm a franchisee. It's a glow that you feel that comes from the inside to your, outer personality.
Well, I think it's also when you take a risk and you do something like, for me, writing a book, which if I knew, I probably wouldn't have done it. But doing it, right? But I did it, and then now you're past that hump and you realize, wow, like no one can ever take that away from me. I did it. I challenged myself. I feel like I went to the Olympics and won the gold medal. When I saw the other day, I got the call that we were on the New York Times bestseller list. But I've worked like a dog.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, how many women of color have been on the New York Times bestseller list? And we looked it up, and it's under 10.
Oh, wow.
And I realized,
and that's the number 10, not 10%.
No, 10, number 10. Wow. And I realized, wow, like that was a feat. It was like winning a gold medal at the Olympics, It was like,
yeah.
And we forget that inside of your body is how you create empowerment. Empowerment is not something outside of yourself that somebody anoints you. It isn't.
Yeah.
It's that feeling that you have done the impossible.
Yeah.
For you. And for everybody that's different, what the impossible is for you. And that you've climbed, and for me, look, I'm older than you, so I've climbed many mountains.
No,
and to
I
know,
won't say you're older than me, but if you want to say that.
No, I am. Trust me, I know I am. And I want to say that it also never gets easier, right?
No. Mm-mm.
But what are we going to do? Just give up, or do we try to keep climbing? And do we try to, better ourselves? And the goal is there's a great word in Spanish, realizada. And realizada means that it's kind of like you feel complete inside of you. And I feel like for women, it is about that feeling like you can do it and that you went beyond the odds and did it. And that doesn't mean it's perfect.
No.
And that doesn't mean that it even is what it looks like. Mm-hmm. But you know that you're in it and you're in it to win it. What happens to the people that get laid off, that are not selling on eBay on weekends or driving their car, driving an Uber or a Lyft on weekends, putting that money away because you had money put away?
Yes.
So how did you know to do that?
Well, that comes from a different story. We were, a few years ago, my family was involved in a bus rollover accident. And it was a very severe accident where someone lost life and my sister lost their arm. So, we were blessed with the settlement, So,
But you didn't spend it.
I didn't spend it. As a matter of fact, I structured mine until I knew what I wanted to do with it, because irregardless of how much money you get, you can spend it like that.
As I recall, and you tell me if I'm wrong, when you go in to a franchise, they pretty much tell you, we can kind of guarantee you in this location, you'll get this percentage revenue, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
But then what I heard when I was doing the training about it is there's a 3 or 4% differential depending on how much you market.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Your marketing is everything. Your marketing and promoting of the business. And, when it's a county where it's already, the Wingstop in that county, then they can give you a projection of how well this store did or how well they do in LA.
It's a comp. It's just like real estate, a comp.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do when you're pioneering.
When you're the pioneer, because like I said, in my head, I thought by now it's going to be eating bonbons on the sofa and that I was going to be a millionaire. Far from it now. The baby is still growing legs. And
it takes time for people to know, and there's a lot of noise in social media, and there's not a lot of noise in a lot of restaurants doing promotion. Like one of the things they told me because I've been studying this for the book, and they said, well, if you're in a local town, you can do things like sponsor a little local baseball team or a football team or whatever. The community needs to know that you exist and that you're there.
Yes. Yes.
So marketing is very important and expensive in the beginning.
Yeah, because like probably here lately, we're trying to draw a lunch business or a lunch crowd, because when you work with fresh food like wings, it takes 15 minutes for the wings to cook. An average person only has an hour for lunch. So if you drive to the location, that's 15 minutes. You wait for your wings to cook, that's 50. You don't have time to eat. So we really have lost out on a lunch crowd. So we're promoting online ordering now. Order your food. By the time you get there, you can still have time to eat it, because we're not one of the restaurants where you can walk up and order.
So
and
you figured out what one of the issues was.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a learning process. We're constantly learning how to evolve and to turn, certain timetables around to bring more productivity to the store. But these are the things that you don't learn when you go to the 4-week training camp. These are the things you learn on location and through experience and through talking to, your customers and having staff meetings with your employees. You kind of learn what works for your store.
Well, and according to what you're saying, I would also assume that staffing is something you had to learn, because if you end up not having such a big lunch crowd, but then you're going to have a lot on nights that are football nights.
Exactly.
Or whatever, you have to learn to pace your staffing, right?
And let me tell you, I'm still learning is the employee versus our overhead, your margins.
Right.
You have to figure out what is your high nights to have X amount of employees versus you don't need that many employees on the floor.
Of the time.
Yeah. So, but it's ever changing. It changes every week.
So what is the advantage in your mind of having a franchise versus a mom and pop brand new restaurant? And what are the advantages?
The advantages for me and what I found out, and I'm sure would be for the multitude who decides to do this, is that there's a blueprint for success. Whenever you go into anything, you go in blind, and if there's not already a pre-structure, then that means you're creating the wheel. And it's already going to be enough work just opening a business. So if you already have a blueprint there that can help guide you and channel you through things, then you're already a step ahead, because depends on where you're going to open your franchise. I know LA or California period is one of the toughest states because the health laws, because of the permits, because of the construction liability, because of the workman comp insurance. Everything's going to be 3 times more expensive, and everything's going to be twice as hard. So the blueprint allows you to at least understand your steps.
What have you brought from your past life in corporate America into this new entrepreneurial business?
When you learn things from high school to college to corporate America, you never know where you're going to apply them or even if they're ever necessary in your life. And then there comes a time in your life where everything that you have learned, everything you was taught, becomes true to fold. You learn where to apply it. So for all the things that I did when I was in corporate America, I don't care if it was writing a letter, reviewing a license, interacting with customers, I've learned to apply it into my own business and into my own life. And now I understand why at that time in my life I learned what I did, because I was going to need to use it now. So everything that I did learn in corporate America, the business aspect, the customer relations, my legal background, all of it has come true to form right now, and I'm living it, but I'm living it for me.
Thank you, Felicia. What an inspiring story. What franchise are you interested in? Which dream do you have that you can plan like Felicia did, and maybe start looking and doing the homework like she did while you have another job? Maybe your side hustle is planning ahead, saving money to buy a franchise. Anyway, I'm very excited for all of you. Thank you, Coca-Cola. I also want to thank WFF, who's co-sponsoring this series of webinars in the food industry. Adelante!